Hey there, Christophe from the French Herbal. In this episode, we're going to talk about the medicinal garden. I started mine in early 2010 and it's gone through different phases of expansion and contraction over the years, depending on the plants I wanted to try, the experiments I wanted to run, and the time I was able to dedicate to it, right? Well, I'm a bit sad to say that today my garden has mostly disappeared due to drought periods being longer and longer where I live and my decision to focus on other activities. But it occupied 10 very good years of my life during which I produced a lot of different plants from around the world. I had an online store where I was selling my seeds, and I could also provide bulk herbs and tinctures to friends. So I learned a lot during that time, and best of all, I got to know a guy that was mostly absent from my life when I was younger, my dad. Gardening pulled us together, him, the vegetable garden, me, the medicinal garden, and I have very fond memories of this time. And my dad passed away a few weeks ago, so a page is turning for me. I would like to send a big thank you to Richo Cech at StrictlyMedicinalSeeds. Before I left the US at the end of 2009, I bought quite a collection of seeds from Richo, and throughout the years I kept buying from him. I built a huge garden thanks to him, right? And the guy is just my garden hero. I used to joke saying that when I grow up I want to be Richo. And then I finally met him in Boston during the International Herbal Symposium in 2019. And I have a very funny picture where he towers over me, right? He's a tall guy and I'm not such a tall guy. So anyway, Richo, if you ever listen to this episode one day, thank you for everything you do. I've planted many medicinal herbs from around the world, often grown from seeds. So I've gained solid gardening experience from start to finish, from sowing to transplanting into pots, to planting in the ground, to harvesting, to drying, to medicine making. And I built all that experience myself. Of course, I could have apprenticed with an experienced gardener. I would have learned much faster and made fewer mistakes. But that's not the path I took, and that's not the way I work. My teachers, my mentors are usually my blunders, my failures, my setbacks, and what I learned from them. And that's the point of today's episode. I want to talk about my biggest mistakes in the medicinal garden and what they taught me. These were pretty fundamental mistakes, errors of vision, you could say of gardening philosophy. And if you are an experienced gardener, you might think, well, duh, it doesn't take a PhD in gardening, not sure that title exists, to figure that out, and you would be right. But I still hope that you, beginning gardener, you, novice herbalist, you will get something useful out of this. I wanted to record this episode in what's left of my garden, but right now it's not looking good. So I decided to go in the largest garden ever made, nature. But I will overlay some videos of the garden to show you what it looked like a few years ago. Hey, just a quick pause to let you know you can grab my free ebook on preparing herbal teas for the 4 seasons. It's full of simple recipes and blends you can make with herbs you can buy or even grow almost anywhere. The link is right below this episode. Go check it out. Okay, mistake number 1, relying too much on books. Throughout the years, many of my French readers asked me what gardening books helped me to create my garden and grow specific plants. None. Zero. And I bought quite a collection of books. In the end, I gave them all away. And that's not a criticism of the authors. Some of these books are excellent. They're written by experienced people and they contain good advice. But unfortunately, none of these authors live on my piece of land with my specific conditions, right? How many times did I read Full Sun and I ended up burning my plants? How many times did I read Infrequent Watering and I found shriveled, dried out plants? And nobody knew the power of the wind blowing through my particular valley, which dries out some plants but not others. So maybe someone has written a gardening book on medicinal plants specifically for my area, you know, telling me, skullcap, you put it in this area with this type of soil and this watering, but I haven't found it. And so I gave away those books, and instead I turned to other books and videos, but more on the fundamental concepts of gardening, you know, soil work, permaculture, etc., but not on specific plants, because nobody knows how it's going to do in your area. Now, for growing at-risk medicinal plants, you have to buy the books from Richo. They're just awesome, and yeah, I am totally biased, as you can see. I just love Strictly Medicinal Seeds. They're not paying me to say this at all. I just love you guys. Mistake number 2, too many plants. So I get overexcited very quickly. I buy a lot of seeds. I buy too many plants. I go to a place that sells medicinal plant in pots, you know, I will buy too many pots. I cannot help it. And then I don't have time to take good care of them. And it's a shame because some of them die or some others I have to give away. And Richo, you again, shame on you, man, for making us salivate when we browse your seed catalog. So here's the deal. During a year, I try to handle a maximum of 10 to 12 different plant species. You can probably do a little more, but if you're just starting, 10 is plenty already. So Echinacea, Calendula, lemon balm, skullcap, whatever. Pick your 10 or 12, no more. Then, if you grow them from seeds, you will end up with plenty of different little plants in your beds, right? Make sure you only select about 6 to 8 of the strongest of each species. So 6 to 8 baby echinaceas, 6 to 8 baby calendulas, etc. So imagine 6 to 8 little pots times 10, and you already have like 80 little pots lying around. That's a lot, right? And man, some years I had hundreds of pots in my greenhouse, and I was almost full-time in the garden. And after a while, I burnt out because I had other jobs to do. Well, not anymore. Now in my 50s, I kind of know how to preserve myself a little better. But in my 30s, gosh, I could just start at 5:30 or 6 a.m. in the morning in the garden and work until nightfall. Anyway, key point, don't do too many. And then with your 6 to 8 little pots of Echinacea or Calendula or whatever, here's what you do. You plant 2 to 3 over here, then 2 to 3 over there. You test 2 different spots under different conditions. And then you keep 2 to 3 in a big pot. And these are just backup in case something goes wrong with the ones you put in the soil. And then you repeat with the other species. Then you take good care of them. Install irrigation. Because yeah, I had a few years with a watering can, install irrigation, mulch, etc. You'll see, you'll be plenty busy. And if you also grow vegetables, well, forget about taking 2 weeks of vacation, unless you have a very dedicated neighbor with a very good sense of observation. Okay, mistake number 3, trying to put the plant in the right spot from the start. It just doesn't work that way. Today, when I introduce a new plant, I have no idea where it will thrive in my garden. I've got beds in full sun, I've got beds in the shade, I have other beds in half sun, half shade. So what I do is introduce, again, 2 or 3 specimens of the same species into 2 or 3 different spots. And experience has shown me that I simply cannot predict where they will be happy, even when the logic seems to be clear, maybe from books, again. So, for example, a few years ago, I introduced sea fennel. A friend sent me some seeds, so I sowed them, and they germinated, and I kept like different pots. Now, the plant, in nature, it grows on seaside cliffs. It tolerates the sea spray and salt, and it resists drought and my conclusion was full sun, little water. But that was a mistake. I ended up moving mine to half shade with regular watering. So time and again, I've learned that when I thought I knew, I actually knew nothing. That's a powerful lesson, and I think it applies to life as well, right? So now I test different areas, and depending on how the plant develops, I'll probably move some next spring. And are we done after that relocation? Not necessarily. You know, sometimes I will notice that a plant that I moved will again reseed itself a little further away, and maybe that's the ideal spot, right? So I let the garden decide and teach me. So what your medicinal garden will look like in 5 years from now has nothing to do with your garden today. And that's wonderful, right? It's a living garden that evolves over time. Another thing you cannot plan ahead is how much space one plant will take compared to another. And that brings us to the next point, which is diversification. So, mistake number 4, not creating diversified spaces. In the early years, my medicinal garden was organized in rows and squares, right? A row of echinacea, a row of feverfew, a row of calendula, a square of German chamomile, a square of lemon balm, where I'm a former engineer, so I probably go by line and squares and triangle and whatever shape, right? Meanwhile, my father had rows of tomatoes, rows of cucumbers, rows of zucchinis, and we were both into rows and seams. And my father's row, oh mine, they were perfectly straight. Mine looked like the work of someone who's had a little too much wine. Anyway, at some point I started to make mixed zones, mostly because I had leftover plants here and there and I didn't know where to put them. So I threw them together in one spot. And of course, once they settled, they loved it, right? They were stronger, they were less disease prone, taller plants, shaded or protected smaller ones from the wind. And that's when I started planning differently. I switched to diversified zones, something I would have learned from the start had I apprenticed with a permaculture gardener. But here we circle back to mistake number 2 as well, thinking you know exactly where to place each plant in such a complex ecosystem. You know, the truth is you have no idea. For instance, I didn't know whether my jiaogulan would climb over my Centella asiatica or the other way around. And the answer is yes, the jiaogulan went over the Centella. Another example is I've got beautiful boneset plants that grew huge in one of my beds. And they shade out my bird's foot trefoil, which in French herbalism is used for sleep issues. And the trefoil stretches very thin toward the light. It needs the light, right? And it grows all spindly. So either I'll have to cut back the boneset or move the trefoil. And since my boneset are just stunning and create shade, I'll probably move the trefoil in a place that has more sun. Again, creating a diversified zone takes years, except that every year you'll need to move some of the plants, make room here, tighten things up there because some plants are sensitive to wind, etc., etc. Mistake number 5, not creating enough shaded areas. Well, if you live somewhere with hot summers, this is a real problem. And again, it's a basic principle of permaculture, but it took me a while to truly understand its importance. And that you don't necessarily need trees, because trees, they take years to grow. You can use taller plants that tolerate the heat. One trick I've been using for a couple of years is a castor bean plant, because the plant grows fast. It's easy to maintain, it's drought resistant, and it creates nice little canopy areas. And then I collect the big seeds and I plant them in the fall where I'll need shade the following year. Then I forget about them, and in the spring, as it starts to get really hot, beginning of the summer maybe, they grow up. Right? At first they're tiny, but then they quickly take over and they create those micro shaded zone. Plus they're really beautiful plants in the garden. Mistake number 6, and that's the last one, stressing out over things beyond my control. I went through a phase where I would be devastated every time wild boars came and destroyed my garden because I don't have fencing. And it happened several times. Once I wanted to cry because a bed of beautiful blue gentians, 6 or 7 years old, got wiped out by the boars. Now, don't tell anyone, but I had fantasies of buying a hunting rifle. I'm not a hunter, but posting myself at night with infrared goggles in the Rambo-style bandana to avenge my poor gentians. But no. In the end, I simply built raised beds out of solid material, and that solved the problem. Then came the vole wars. You know what a vole is? It's a tiny, cute rodent that loves the roots of your medicinal plants. And they dig tunnels all over the place, and they breed like crazy. So I spent weeks and months obsessing over how to get rid of them. Ultrasonic devices, foul-smelling substances put in their tunnels, advice from neighbors and magazines, and of course everyone knew, but nothing worked. In the end, I accepted them and used the same solution. Raised the bed with a fine mesh wire at the bottom of the bed. Problem solved. Well, kind of. Later, tree roots from all around my bed starting invading the beds from below and go through the mesh to steal the water, right, from my irrigation system, choking out all my plants. Some areas became super compacted with tree roots. I could not even plant my spade. Then came the slugs, then came the ants, the aphids, you name it. I was in full control mode. And looking back, I see how foolish I was. You simply cannot control that ecosystem. Or rather, you build the garden so that things will auto-adjust slowly. For instance, I started leaving the yellow docks in my beds. You know, they grow by themselves, I don't plant them, because the aphids love them. And if they go on the yellow docks, they don't go on other plants that I care about. I mean, I care about the yellow dock, but not as much as maybe my other plants. Anyway, and then you have to accept and let go. Even if that means losing plants from time to time, that's just normal. These are just natural cycles. I know it costs time, money, effort, but that's how it goes. I think I had this very naive idea that the normal state of the garden was everything running smoothly, right? That a perfect year meant no problem at all. But there are always problems. And in fact, they're not really problems. They're just natural phenomena in the garden, natural cycles. Let's call them challenges. And you know what? Just like in life, challenges allow us to grow as well. And on that final philosophical note, I will let you go. Thanks for listening. I will see you soon for another episode of The French Herbal.